Now proven against the coronavirus, mRNA can do so much more. CNN, when the final phase 3 data came out last November showing that mRNA vaccines made by Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna were more than 90% effective. Dr. Anthony Fauci had no words. He tested smiley face emojis to us journalists seeking his reaction. This astonishing efficacy has held up in real-world studies in the US, Israel, and elsewhere. The mRNA technology developed for its speed and flexibility as opposed to expectations it would provide strong protection against an infectious disease has pleased and astonished even those who already advocated for it. The messenger RNA or mRNA platform may be new to the global public, but it is a technology that researchers have been betting on for decades. Now those bets are paying off, and not just by turning back a pandemic that killed millions in just a year. This approach that leads to remarkably safe and effective vaccines against the new virus is also showing promise against old enemies such as HIV and infections that threaten the babies and young children such as respiratory syncytial virus called RSV and metapneumovirus. It's being tested as a treatment for cancers including melanoma and brain tumors. It might offer a new way to treat autoimmune diseases and is also being checked out as a possible alternative to gene therapy for intractable conditions such as sickle cell disease. Vaccines. The story of mRNA vaccines dates back to the early 1990s when Hungarian-born researcher Katalin Karikó of the University of Pennsylvania started testing mRNA technology as a form of gene therapy. The idea is similar whether scientists want to use the mRNA molecule to cure disease or prevent it, send instructions to the cells of the body to make something specific. Researchers like to use the cookbook analogy. The body's DNA is the cookbook. Messenger RNA is a copy of the recipe, one that disappears quickly. In the case of genetic disease, it can be used to instruct the cells to make a healthy copy of the protein. In the case of mRNA vaccines, it's used to tell cells to make what looks like a piece of virus, so the body produces antibodies and special immune system cells in response. The recipe disappears while the cooked product, the body's immune response, lasts. Karikó was unable to drum up much interest in this idea for years, but for the past 15 years or so, she's teamed up with Dr. Drew Weissman, an infectious disease expert and Penn Medicine, to apply mRNA technology to vaccines. Since scientists started focusing on the threat of the pandemic caused by a new influenza or coronavirus, we have recognized the promise of mRNA vaccines for quickly turning around the pandemic vaccine. When you want to make a new influenza vaccine using the traditional method, you have to isolate the virus, learn how to grow it, learn how to inactivate it, and purify it. that takes a month. With RNA, you only need the sequence, Weissman told CNN. They did not even need a sample of the virus itself. When the Chinese released the sequence of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, we started the process of making RNA the next day. A couple weeks later, we were injecting animals with the vaccine. Although it sounded revolutionary, the idea was far from new to Weissman, Carico, and others. In my lab, we have been working on vaccines for years. We have 5 phase 1 clinical trials that we started before COVID hit, said Weissman, whose work with Carico helped lead to Pfizer-BioNTech's coronavirus vaccine. They've been delayed because of the pandemic. The plan is to complete them next year. 2 of these experimental vaccines target influenza, including one Weissman hopes will be a so-called universal influenza vaccine, one that will protect against the rapidly mutating strains of flu and perhaps offer people years of protection with a single shot, eliminating the need for fresh immunizations each flu season. They are also working on 2 vaccines against the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, that causes the AIDS, and one to prevent genital herpes. Researchers have also studied mRNA vaccines to fight Ebola, Zika, rabies, and cytomegalovirus. Another possible target, respiratory syncytial virus (RSV) infects most people in babyhood, and it can put fragile infants into the neonatal intensive care unit. It kills an estimated 100 to 500 children a year. The U.S. Centers of Disease Control and Prevention estimates but it kills an estimated 14,000 adults, mostly over age 65. It infects everyone by age 2, said Jason McLellan, a structural biologist and Robert A. Welch Chair in Chemistry at the University of Texas at Austin, who's working on the several coronavirus vaccines. One obstacle will be finding the best version of the viruses. McLellan specialized in finding just the right conformation of the target viral structures that will allow the human immune system to best recognize and build defenses against them. GlaxoSmithKline and Pfizer were both working on that, he said. A different common cold virus called the human metapneumovirus, which can cause the pneumonia in adults and children alike, is another potential target for a vaccine, McLellan said. Again, ongoing work helped speed the development of coronavirus vaccines, McLellan said. In this case, work on the original 2003 to 2004 severe acute respiratory syndrome or SARS virus and the Middle East respiratory or MERS virus helped the researchers understand which version of the knot-like structure found on the south side of the virus called the spike protein to use in making vaccines. We figured out how to stabilize the coronavirus spikes back in 2016, so we had all the knowledge ready when COVID-19 emerged, McLellan said. It was ready to go within hours, he said. Other potential vaccines include malaria, tuberculosis, and rare viruses such as Nipah virus, Weissman said, all made more possible by the mRNA technology. Effective vaccines against these infections have eluded scientists for various regions. Weissman's lab is now working on a universal coronavirus vaccine that would protect against COVID-19, SARS, MERS, coronavirus that caused the common cold, and future strains. We started working on a pan-coronavirus vaccine last spring, Weissman said. There have been 3 coronavirus epidemics in the past 20 years. There are going to be more, and mRNA vaccines work very well. We knew in mice and monkeys and rabbits and pigs and chickens that it was very potent, Weissman said. The Pfizer vaccine, he said, produced an antibody response that is 5 times bigger than what's seen in people who have recovered from infection. Cancer. Another obvious use for mRNA technology is to fight cancer. The human body fights off cancer every day, and using mRNA could help it do so even better. You can use it to have your body produce the beneficial molecule, Maggie said. Different tumor type cell types have various recognizable structures on the outside that the immune system can recognize. You can imagine being able to inject someone with an mRNA that encodes an antibody that specifically targets that receptor, Maggie said. Moderna, a company formed specially to develop mRNA technology, is working on personalized cancer vaccines. We identify mutations found on patient cancer cells, the company says on its website. Computer algorithm predict the 20 most common mutations. We then create the vaccine that encodes for each of these mutations and load them onto a single mRNA molecule, Moderna says. That's injected into the patient to try to help orchestrate a better immune response against the tumors. This is early phase 1 clinical research. Biotech founders Ugur Sahin and Özlem Türeci also had cancer vaccines in mind from the beginning. The company has 8 potential cancer treatments in human trials. While we believe our approach is broadly applicable across the number of therapeutic areas, our most advanced programs are focused on oncology, where we have treated over 250 patients across the 17 tumor types to date, the company says on its website. Autoimmune disease. Using mRNA to fight autoimmune disease is an exciting area, Maggie said. Current treatments are crude and involve tamping down specific areas of the mistaken immune response, something that can leave patients with autoimmune disease such as lupus or rheumatoid arthritis vulnerable to infection. BioNTech has been working with academic researchers to use mRNA to treat mice engineered to develop the disease similar to multiple sclerosis, an autoimmune disease that starts when the immune system mistakenly attacks the myelin, a fatty covering of the nerve cells. In the mice, the treatment appears to help stop the attack while keeping the rest of the immune system intact. Gene therapy. The idea behind gene therapy is to replace the defective gene with one that works properly. Despite decades of work, researchers haven't had much success, with the exception of certain immune deficiencies and some eye disease. It's difficult to find a factor to carry the corrected gene into cells without causing side effects, and it's a way that lasts. The mRNA approach promises to send the instructions for making the healthy version of a protein, and Weissman sees special promise in treating sickle cell disease in particular. In sickle cell disease, red blood cells take an folded shape and can clog tiny blood vessels, causing pain and organ damage. Messenger mRNA could be used to change the instructions going to the bone marrow where the red blood cells are made, telling them to make healthier shaped cells. Now that we can target that cell, the hope is we can give people an injection of RNA and it will target the bone marrow stem cells and fix the disease, Weissman said. It's gene therapy without the $500,000 price tag, he added. It should be just an IV injection and that's it. Tests in mice are showing promise. The next step is to test the approach in monkeys, Weissman said. In 2008, a company then called Shire Pharmaceuticals started to develop mRNA treatment for cystic fibrosis, a deadly genetic illness caused by any one of a number of small mutations to a gene called CFTR. That technology is now owned by Translate Bio, a company dedicated to making mRNA therapies and vaccines. It's working to correct the faulty CFTR in the lung by delivering mRNA via a nebulizer. The treatment appears safe in early stage trials in people and has won orphan drug status from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Tick-borne disease. The mRNA approach might also work against some tick-borne disease, Weissman said. The idea there is if you were immune to tick saliva proteins, when the tick bites you, the body produces the inflammation and the tick falls off, Weissman said. Lyme disease is caused by the bacteria Borrelia burgdorferi, and the tick generally has to stay attached 36 to 48 hours before it transmits the bacteria to the host. If the tick falls off before that, it cannot transmit the infection.